Welcome to the SaaS AdLab podcast, where we bring to you the stories of SaaS founders, entrepreneurs, and CEOs. My name is Luis. I'm the founder of Fantôm Agency, a digital marketing agency specializing in scaling SaaS companies. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing Caryl. He is the co-founder and chief evangelist over at SmartCSM. Thank you so much for being on here today. It's a pleasure having you. I know you got a lot of things going on. Life's busy, so I appreciate you taking the time of the day to be on here with me today. And first of all, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background and introduce yourself?
It's a great opportunity, and thank you for taking the time to interview me. So I'm honored to be part of your podcast. My name's Caryl. I'm a serial entrepreneur. This is my fifth or sixth company. A couple of big colossal failures, a couple of good successes, and I think this is the one that's going to hit it out of the park. I really believe we're in the right place at the right time. SmartCSM is in the blue-collar tech space, or real tech, real estate tech, whatever you want to call it. I like blue-collar tech because I think it really resonates in the space that we're working in. And essentially what we've created is almost like the Google Maps of MEP, or mechanical, electrical, plumbing. So we look at large commercial properties, and how do we create a visual tool that any subcontractor, field tech can go in there and instantly, in a snap, understand the entire infrastructure. Where the mechanical rooms are, where the VAVs are for the air handling units, where are the breaker panels, where's the generator, what does it feed? These large commercial properties, 100,000 square foot, million square feet, 10 million square feet, they're incredibly complicated beasts. And usually there's one or two or three or four really key employees that understand it all, and it lives in here. And that's the scary part. So that's the disruptor in SmartCSM is we take that institutional knowledge, that tribal knowledge, and we created a visual tool where you could know nothing about the building and walk in and have a very good understanding of the mechanics. Very
cool. And I mean, like you said, buildings and electrical systems and things like that, they're super complex things that I don't think the regular individual that isn't necessarily involved with any of that knows how any of this works. So we'll try to keep it as, I guess, simple as possible, I guess. And even myself, right? Like, I don't know how these things work. But I think it's very cool that you're able to essentially provide such a simple solution to the end worker that is going to be, in the weeds doing everything that they need to do in these projects, essentially. So how did you go, or I guess, what's the background that led you to create this product?
So if you look at my background, it's counterintuitive that I would be doing a SaaS project in the facility management space. It's mostly counterintuitive because I have no physical skill to handle power tools. Like in my house, my wife changes all the light bulbs. For Christmas 2 years ago, I bought her a brand new tool set with every drill. So my friend just built the house, and I offered to come help him. He told me, don't come because you'll wreck something because you're terrible with power tools. But what I am is an opportunist, and I can run the numbers very quickly, and I have a very good understanding of how businesses work and where the opportunity is. So an electrical contractor brought me this idea about 4.5 years ago. And I looked at it like I look at any business that I am going to go potentially into, and I spend months studying it, and I try to talk myself out of it. And I try every idea possible and imaginable to convince myself that it's a terrible idea, that it'll fail, or even that it's an okay idea. Because if it's not a home run, it's so hard to get these projects off the ground that if it's not a home run, then it's not worth doing most of the time, in my opinion, unless it's a passion project, which this was not for me. But I saw a gigantic opportunity, and my first gut given the amount of expenditure going on and the amount of capital involved in caring for a business like this, it seems like a physical impossibility that this doesn't exist. So I talked to about 100 facility managers, building engineers, field techs, and I found out there was an opportunity. There was a space that was not occupied in a crowded space of software, but there was a clear space in creating this like we call it BIM for dummies. So BIM is building information modeling. It's basically how buildings are built using 3D rendering or CAD. Very expensive process. So we dumbed that down and we created BIM for dummies, a program that anybody can learn in an hour. I taught my 10-year-old kid how to basically set up our house, and he's like, hey, when are we going to put this socket in? When are we going to put that breaker panel in?
Right.
So that easy.
Very cool. That's awesome, because and that's one thing, right? Like, a lot of people want to or the reason why they don't go into something is because they realize that, okay, like maybe I don't know enough of whatever it is that I'm trying to do to actually do it. And you kind of proven that not to be the case, because essentially you don't necessarily understand a lot of the things that go on within the actual, product itself, like what it's trying to solve, but you still went for it because you knew that there was that gap that wasn't being filled by somebody else that essentially would have more knowledge than you, but they didn't decide to do it. So that's pretty cool.
This is what I knew about SaaS, and this is what I knew about facility infrastructure. The last project I did was I did a medical product, and then before that, I launched a big toy product for Hasbro, a robotic pet project for Hasbro, and both have been wildly successful. But I knew nothing about those spaces either. I just studied them. And so when I approached this space, I did the same thing. I talked to people, listen to them. And then you have to do good hiring. Like, people are not going to give you money if you know nothing about SaaS.
Right.
But if you have a good idea, and I put about $500,000 of friends and family together, and I built out that idea in a prototype, or an MVP, a minimum viable product. And then I hired a SaaS expert, and that's Danny, who basically came in initially as COO and about a month ago transitioned to CEO.
Very cool. Now, when like most of these streamlined SaaS companies, essentially like more of the B2C, even though they're still B2B, they price their software on a monthly subscription, or you can get a yearly subscription. How did you figure out the best way possible to price SmartCSM?
So my suggestion is you price until you get pushback. Until you get pushback, there's lateral movement. So we started out at a very low price because we had no idea what the value was, right? Like, what's our real value proposition? In other words, what are we saving you? Well, our value proposition is we're saving you time, money, and lives, or keeping your people safer. So, it's very difficult to get a clear metric on money you're saving somebody unless you can look at a power bill and look at a reduction, right? How do you say we reduced accidents? Because you don't know how many accidents would have happened. So it's always one of the challenges. So we priced it very low in the beginning. People didn't believe it. It seemed too cheap. And it was overcomplicated. We charged one to have the software, and then we charged per item that you wanted to put in. It got way too complicated. So it's a process of trial and error. Because nobody had done software exactly like we had done it, we couldn't look at 5 other models.
Right. You couldn't.
Which is really what you want to do. You want to look at how those other guys did it and how they screwed it up, and then avoid that learning curve. We had to go through the learning curve, which took months and months. And look, I would say we're still not 100% on pricing. We're pretty close. We're probably 90%, but we're starting to offer more full services. We're sending teams into the field to provide actual physical data onboarding for people, because we found out there's a segment of clients, 40 to 45% of them, who are like, you know what? I love the software. I got no time to put it in. I'll pay you 2.5 times the rate to come in and put the data in. Okay, so now we're a services company. We have a services division. Now we're starting to do some engineering services, like what they call arc flash or IR scans, which is thermal images looking for heat sources, because it's a great time to get all the data in. So we look at services that we can bring to the table that allow us to easily get the data in at the same time. So sometimes putting pieces together in a puzzle makes the whole picture work a little better.
Definitely. Now, to talk a little bit more about marketing from a very, very B2B standpoint, what does that look like for you? Like, what are some of the activities that are currently taking place as far as, just making sure that the company gets out there? How do you make sure that people know that it exists? Because like you said, even though there was a gap, that doesn't mean that people necessarily know about what it is that they're looking for. So how are people finding you, or how are you going to people that could use a solution?
So this is the $99,000 question right here: is how do you reach extremely busy people in the B2B marketplace? So our typical client is a facility manager or a building engineer, sometimes a building owner, but primarily the facility managers or the gatekeepers. These people are getting about 100 phone calls a day from people like us. They want to talk to 3 of them, maybe 4 of them, but they don't want to talk to the other 97 of them that are trying to sell them janitorial services, paper products, security services. So it's always very difficult to kind of burst through that bubble. We're very old school. We do a lot of just picking up the phone and calling people. on average, we'll call people 15, 20 times before we make contact sometimes. It'll take 2 or 3 meetings because they'll cancel because they'll get really busy or an emergency will happen. So it's a lot of kind of pounding, ground and pound, as we say. It's also things like LinkedIn. It's looking where people spend time.
Totally.
We tried things like contests on Facebook, like where we did send in your worst breaker panel, and the winner gets a Milwaukee, drill set. We just didn't get a good conversion. So podcasts, we're starting to do webinars, things like that. We send out a weekly email cadence. We have about 150, 200,000 people on our marketing list that are on a weekly basis, getting some sort of suggested tip from us. So, people are so barraged by advertisements these days. I think there's something like 70,000 images and thoughts that come.
It's a huge number. I used to know it, but I don't remember it anymore.
I think it grows. Every day. Every day they Google and everybody figures out different ways to influence you. Now it's at the restaurant table and it's on the menu and it's like I can't get away from it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's constantly trying to get through that clutter. It's trade shows. It's a lot of personal relationships. It's, what we call VARs, value-added resellers or channel partners, electrical contractors that recommend us to their clients. Nothing's really changed in sales. It's all about the warm lead. How do I get somebody who will endorse me? I got to have a happy customer. And how do I get 5 or 10 leads from them? And hopefully one of them turns into it, and it grows that way.
Totally.
So there's not one answer. It's to get the SQLs, the sales qualified leads, the MQLs, the marketing qualified leads. It's incredibly complicated, and we have a very smart guy that's all he does all day long is tinker.
Yeah. Good. What is the one thing that, or essentially how are you guys leveraging, I guess data from customers to do anything else with it?
So it's funny you should bring this up because ultimately we see ourselves as a big data play. Although most customers do not, that's not our forward-facing position. Our forward-facing position is, hey, we're a visual database to help you understand your mechanical infrastructure, and we're here to to make your life easier and to make it so everybody has access to almost to democratize that information. But ultimately, if you want to know why the venture capitalists and the investors see us as not a $100 million company, but $1 billion company, it's because of the big data play. Mm-hmm. Because, when you can look at thousands of customers and you can look at their air handling units or their HVAC units or, their generators or their transformers, and you can start to aggregate that data, even if you're anonymizing that data, that's incredibly powerful. Whether that's lead gen that you could sell to people or preventative maintenance that you can offer your customers as an additional added value, or companies like Ideal Industries, the circuit tracing company is one of our partners that we're working with to help them develop products based on what we're seeing in the marketplace. It's all about the data at the end of it. So it's funny you pick up on that because most people don't.
Yeah. I think it's important to know, right? Because we're living in a world where essentially like data is currency, and essentially like that's the one thing that people want to be getting from you and I and pretty much everyone else is just give me a little bit of that information and I can do a lot of different things with it. So I think people understand that to an extent at least.
There's an interesting trend in facilities right now. So everybody talks about IoT, or in the building world, it's BIoT, building Internet of Things.
Okay.
So, people talk about, in the next 5 years, we're going to be measuring everything, the amount of light source in this room, the amount of times that door opens and closes. And look, there's some truth to that. The reality is that over the next 5 years, we'll probably have 3 to 5% of these devices installed. It's just not moving as fast as the Ray Kurzweil. These measuring devices, meters, monitors, whatever they are, but they just monitor this one little sliver of information. How much airflow is coming out of a vent, how much power is being used on a certain circuit, but there's not a total picture. So if you don't have that whole picture together, the data is really not that useful to you. It's in a small way. So we're trying to create that whole digital ecosystem, almost like a digital bridge from paper analog to the digital future, and eventually tying into the building Internet of Things, or BIoT.
Very cool. Now, to talk a little bit more about the product and kind of like some of the issues that come with it, right? selling the product, what are some of the biggest objections that you get, and how do you handle those?
So I would say almost 100% of the people that we share the product with say, wow, this is revolutionary. I love it. I want it. But how long does it take to get the information in, right? How difficult will it be
Mhm.
for me to, because it's not really useful just as a standalone software. It's useful once the data is into it.
So that's to what I was thinking, right? Is it's not only getting the information in, but it's also getting your employees or the contractors to start using them, to get them trained on it. So there's got to be some pushback with, as far as, it's totally worth it, but it's also going to take a lot of time to get it implemented essentially.
So the second part is not really the big pushback, right? Because there's ways to, first of all, you can make your employers do it. You can say either do it or, get the F out. You can make your subcontractors do it. You can make it as part of a deliverable, right? Your closeout package. A closeout package is like, okay, the job's done. You did this construction project. The closeout package is, okay, here's all your manuals. So part of your closeout package, you can put in the contract, you have to deliver the closeout package digitally through SmartCSM. So that's not really the challenge. The biggest challenge is how do we get the data in initially? Now, that's not really a challenge in new construction because during the closeout package, it's easy to do and it's all accurate. But if you got a building that's 30, 40 years old, it could take a long time to get that data in. So we're in the process of building a tool called Live Plans. And Live Plans is basically a data aggregator that uses machine learning and AI to read plans. So we're working on a tool, and it's working right now. It's just not ready to go live. It won't go live till early next year, where we can read the plans and we can instantly take all the icons off those plans and make those in part of SmartCSM. So that will skip like 2/3 of the process of importing data right now. So it's going to take, like, to bring a breaker panel in right now, it might take us an hour and a half, but with Live Plans, it might take us 30 minutes. So we think it's going to cut down that process by about 2/3 and really revolutionize our ability to serve clients.
To sell that, totally. What is the most challenging thing about running a SaaS company?
I think it's always the balance between venture capitalists and investors and the marketplace. Like, when you're on the whiteboard, right? The whiteboard is everybody's friend. Oh, month 2, we'll do this, and month 11, we'll do this. And then we go to Series A, and this partner is going to come, and that partner is going to come. And look, it all makes a lot of sense when you're building out your plan. Having been through a number of these projects, I have yet to see a plan work on plan. I've yet to see a company that, hits all its numbers. Every once in a while, you got the compacts of the world that just go crazy. But more than this, it's usually like this,
Right.
And, you got to not get discouraged during those times. You're always going to have channel partners that don't work out. People that are like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and then they don't do anything. Right. So you have to be able to deal with those disappointments and those challenges, and you have to pivot, and really, you just got to stay positive. You got to believe in what you're doing, because if you don't believe in what you're doing, then the team's not going to believe you. And look, there's times that I get up in the morning and I just like, what am I going to do? But I come in with a smile on my face, and I was like, come on, guys, let's charge into the fire. Everybody grab my hand. You gotta create enthusiasm, and you got to do that with the customer too. You got to say, we're going to change your life. We have a slide on one of our presentation decks that shows the facility manager with a tan, and like sunglasses and sitting with a mirror. So we're trying to put that image in his or her head that, look, you get our software, it's easy time. You're on Easy Street. Is that guy going to get a tan? No, he's not going to get a tan. He's just going to get more work. But we're trying to, we're selling him on the vision, Louis.
Totally. I like it. Now to kind of pivot into a little bit more of a, personal kind of questions. First of all, what is your biggest accomplishment with SmartCSM?
Wow, it's a tough one. I always think it's a miracle that companies get off the ground. If you look at the rate of failure, just the fact that we're in big clients, like we have Goodyear, we have United Airlines, we have Delta Airlines, we have Carrier Corp, Children's Hospital Orange County, like really blue chip companies, which is very unusual. Usually you get the sort of the mom and pops, you get the early adopters, the technology sort of forward thinking folks. And we have some of that, but we also have some traditional, very staid conservative companies that are like, wow, you're solving a problem. So we're going to try this in this plant. And if that goes well, we're going to put it in 100 plants across America. I would say, to me, that's probably the most exciting aspect aspect of it is the rate of adoption. Like,
Mhm.
I wish we had more companies. I wish they were paying a higher ACV, but I think that when you see the Goodyears and United Airlines and Delta Airlines, these are gigantic names. You know,
Right.
Children's Hospital Orange County is one of the top hospitals in the United States. That's a gigantic seal of approval that, you know, we like this. We're going to help you make it better, and we're going to help you expand to other organizations, and we're going to, you know, we're going to advocate for you. That's the
That's
big
really,
pat on the back you can get.
right. It gives you that sense of accomplishment, definitely, and especially when you have like big, like you said, established companies, it definitely speaks for itself, I think.
It's like I don't know if you have kids, but like you have a baby, right? And you're like, one day it starts to walk. You're like, oh my God, he walked, you know, and then he talked and he ate.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like, to me, it's a miracle. Like, I only have one child, but a company is very much the same way. Like, it was an idea that this guy brought me, and then, you know, we sat in total obscurity for a year and a half, you know, working in a crappy office on the second floor above a hair salon, you know, smelling like nail polish all day long, getting high on it. And you know, 4 years later, you know, we're doing, you know, big 25,000 average contract value per client. We're doing 2-3 year deals with people.
That's awesome.
I just got back from UCLA. I was doing a big pitch with UCLA, and they're like, "Look, we like this. We might do a proof of concept with you." It's like, you don't get any bigger than a UCLA.
That's really, really cool. What is just your favorite SaaS company, you know, that you kind of look up to? And it doesn't have to be like a huge unicorn, anything like that. Just something that you've noticed that they're doing good, and you kind of, you know, not studying them necessarily, but you like look at what it is that you're doing in case you can almost, you know, repeat something.
I have to think about that. You know, there's a lot of great SaaS tools out there that I use these days. I don't know. I'd like to come back to that one and think about that one, if that's okay. You know.
Yeah. And second to last question, what's your favorite book?
My favorite book is The Professor and the Madman.
Okay.
So it's this is my favorite recent book. It's a book about the creation of the Oxford English Dictionary.
Okay.
And so there was no dictionaries until about the early 1700s, and a professor in England set about to create a dictionary, a formal dictionary. And so he asked people to donate words. And so people would donate 100 words and 50 words with their description. And then one guy contributed 26,000 words over like a 30-year period.
Mm-hmm.
And the professor, who ultimately died before it was made and his son took over, would constantly invite this person, because he lived like an hour away, you know. He'd say, "Oh, you must come and we'd love to meet you," and he would respectfully decline. And then one day it was done after 25 or 30 years. And so he's like, "Well, since you won't come to us, we're going to deliver it to you." And it turns out he was locked up in an insane asylum. And he was the madman, and he had been locked in an insane asylum for 30 years. He was a very well-educated American doctor who, in the Civil War, I think, had murdered somebody in England, and family put him up there, and he had a giant library, and he was just a brilliant guy. So I love The Professor and the Madman.
Mm-hmm.
I love Blue Ocean Strategy too, which I think is a great business book.
Mm-hmm.
I read a ton of business books, and you know, just kind of love that whole world. You know, there's so much information available to entrepreneurs now, you know, between the talks, and it's like, you don't need to go to college. I mean, I'm not saying you can go to college, but there's just so much good information out there. If you take the time to drill down, it's incredible what's out there.
And, I mean, I almost agree with that to an extent too about college. You know, there's a lot of different things that you can study without it, and you can get information from a lot of people that are very well qualified, that don't necessarily have to be professors or anything like that, that understand what it is that you're looking for, etc. So.
To answer your question about SaaS, you know, there's so many products that I use that are SaaS.
Kind of cut off there for a sec.
Adobe, you know, this is years ago, but when they first went to that model, I was really surprised. And a friend of mine worked there and was describing it to me. And, you know, I really give them a lot of credit for kind of kicking off this space. I'm no expert in the history of it, but it's one of the first companies that I became really conscious of that was doing this model, and like, they hit it out of the park. Like, wow, you know, like everybody I used to own a TV production companies. That was a business that I owned for a long time. And we all stole Adobe software. Nobody was paying for it. You know, somebody would buy it and then we'd all use it. And Adobe beat us. They beat us down. You know, they beat us out of the game, and they did a great job. They created a great online tool. And because of obviously broadband, a lot of other things that changed, they made a tool that was far better and it was far more versatile than the old school of using hard drives and having to download the software and just transmit huge files. Now, we're doing everything on their cloud. It's great. So
Yeah.
maybe it's kind of a weenie answer, but it's one of the things that sort of I looked at it and I was like, that's smart. I want to learn about this space because this seems like the future.
Yeah, 100%. And last question, do you have any questions for me?
Well, what inspired you to run this podcast? Because I'm fascinated about that.
It's really, and that's a question that I get often, but it's really just trying to learn from people, right? And a lot of the times, I would sit and think like first of all, how do I get in touch with people that are doing big things, people that are running their company successfully, et cetera. And eventually myself, I want to start a software company. And I thought, like what better way to go directly to the people that are doing so and learn how it is that they're doing that, what challenges they're facing with, what has been working for them best. And so I decided I'm going to start a podcast, interview, top SaaS CEOs and listen to what it is that they have to say.
So one of the things I love about people like you is you get to really sample all these different food groups, all these SaaS food groups. And so I gotta, think that you're sort of developing an idea. Is there a space that you really like, or where do you see the next kind of launching pad, or where do you see your launching pad in the SaaS space?
I personally, I love anything that has to do with psychology and also marketing. I love consumer behavior and things like that. So I've been thinking about building a company that is obviously a software company, but something in the marketing space, some sort of MarTech technology. I'm not entirely sure what it is yet. I'm thinking probably in this space of spyware technology to understand more of advertisements and what ads people are running and something along those lines. Still very, very early, but that's kind of like the thought behind it.
It's funny because I'm also a fan of psychology, probably because I'm so screwed up mentally. But one of the things I'm interested in is will AI be able to work as a psychologist in the future? Can a machine be trained to help you work through emotional problems? Because emotional problems are highly complex. And
I never thought about that question.
When you can get down to your inner child or whatever it is, just to use sort of a standard jargon, but
right.
like peeling back the onion layers, will machine learning and AI be able to ultimately help guide you on that journey through the different dark passageways in your brain to really get to what the problem is? Because sometimes we have all this all this noise in between, but really there's a simple solution, but you got to get through the noise. So I'm always fascinated in where computers will be. Will I be able to save $200 an hour? Do I got to keep spending that money?
No, I 100% agree. And I obviously don't have an answer for that. We'll probably have to go ask Elon for that. But I think technology is going really cool places, especially with all the kind of brain stuff that AI obviously and all that he's doing. But it looks like I think we have a pretty interesting future ahead. So
maybe
I guess
sell the couch, you buy the couch and you get the therapy with it.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. That's a good idea. But I think that's about it.
Louis, you and me, let's go do it.
Let's do it. I'm down.
Bet.
And I think that's about wraps it up. And again, Craig, I really appreciate you taking the time for this. It was fun. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for your time, and please keep in touch and send me your personal email so I have it.
We'll do. All right. Bye-bye.